I cannot overstate the importance of investing in your mind. People talk about college is a bad investment. Well, yes, it is, but the investment in your education is not a bad investment. You can get educated in many, many ways. I put more effort now in my education than I ever did when I was in school. So, and the reason that I bring that up is because today's topic is self-sufficient ignorance. Self-sufficient ignorance is one of those things that a lot of people succumb to. It becomes one of those things that ends up happening as you go along in your life, because what got you here was great. You know, you got you to the point that you are in your life, and I think that is a fantastic thing. Now, how are you going to get further than that? There's a few things about being self-sufficient that are very, very good, and a few things that are being self-sufficient that actually impede your progress. So we're going to go over a few of these as we go, and I think this is going to be a little bit of a shorter show. Let's hope. Anyway, so self-sufficient ignorance, what is it? Well, ignorance is lack of knowledge or information. Really, ignorance is not necessarily, it gets used as a really, really character type of, or it gets used as a form of character assassination in a high level. This person is ignorant, when really, like I say it all the time, like I am ignorant to that fact. I'm ignorant to knowledge around this thing. Like we were talking, I was in a conversation with somebody that was Hispanic this weekend, and we were talking about socioeconomic stuff and race and all this kind of stuff. It was a wonderful discussion. It was really, really cool because we took disagreement out of the scenario, and we just talked about hypotheticals, and we decided between the two of us that we were not going to take anything personal, and it went really, really well. We just listened for knowledge to understand each other, and it was cool. We didn't have that ignorance thing in the way, or because we laid it on the line that there are certain things that I am ignorant to about. Like, for instance, you don't know anything about my life. You're completely ignorant to my life, just like I am completely ignorant to yours, until we have a sit down and we actually start exchanging information. Then we become less ignorant to that thing. So, point of that is, self-sufficient ignorance is just a lack of information. We have a lack of information. Hello, Rachel Park. I see you comment there. Hello, Aaron Shaw. I see you on the show. Anyway, what is self-sufficient ignorance? Well, if we're going to get into that, we just went over ignorance, a lack of knowledge and information. That's something that you can change, right? Now, I call self-sufficient ignorance because there's a pro and a con here. Because self-sufficient, if you just said self-sufficient, you'd be like, that's a very positive thing. You'd say ignorance is probably a very negative thing, and I'd have to agree. Self-sufficient, though, let's go into the definition on that. Self-sufficient is needing no outside help in satisfying one's basic needs, especially with regard to the production of food. The example is, I don't think Botswana, due to the climate, could ever be self-sufficient in food. I don't know, that's what Google's definition example is. But anyway, the other definition is emotionally and intellectually independent. Now that sounds very positive, right? And I think that it is. And I have to agree, like I have to fully agree that self-sufficient has its pros, but it also has its cons. And the pros are great. It got you here. Being self-sufficient, being tough, pushing yourself, did a lot of great things. You know, nobody is ever going to push you, so you better push yourself. No one ever is going to crawl in your brain and make you learn the stuff, right? You have to take responsibility in learning. Like when you talk about a teacher and a student, you have the teacher up there. No matter how hard that teacher works, no matter what that teacher does, the teacher can only teach. It cannot learn for the student. The student has to take the effort to learn the material. Now, is there a shared responsibility? Sure, that's the clarity of responsibility. But the teacher can't learn for the kid. The kid has to do the learning. So self-sufficient ignorance, self-sufficient is a very good thing. Ignorance, maybe not so great a thing. The pros are, it got you where you are, and it made you be able to rely on yourself. There's a certain amount of power in being able to rely on yourself. That's a good thing. The cons is that you have to make every one of the mistakes along the way to learn. You know, one of the great mistakes I think that people make is that they think they have to make all the mistakes. That, like, the great mistake of thinking that mistakes are a great thing is that you have to make all the mistakes yourself. No, you don't. There are so many other people that have gone before you that have done this thing that you're trying to do, that you can look at their mistakes and learn from it so that you don't have to make that same mistake. For instance, with me, I got a shoulder injury. I've got 3 major shoulder injuries. I've got a neck thing. I did my elbow. I did my wrist. I did my hip. I did my knee. I did my foot. At one point, I couldn't walk. In 2007, I couldn't walk for an entire year. You know, you don't, like, part of the reason I do this, the job that I do, Because you don't have to make all the mistakes that I made. You can actually get somewhere without making all those mistakes that I made so that you don't have to end up like me. Now, I think I'm in a very good position. I have very good health. Everything's going very well for me. My body feels probably better than it ever has. But at the same time, I went through a lot of traumatic injuries and a lot of pain to be able to get here that you don't have to get to. Learn from my mistakes, just like learn from the mistakes of your friends, learn from the mistakes of your mentors, learn from the mistakes of the people, the books that you read and the shows that you watch. Learn from their mistakes. Don't think that you're going to make all the mistakes yourself. That's that self-sufficient ignorance. That's why self-sufficient is not necessarily a good thing, because you think you have to make all the mistakes to do that. Self-sufficient ignorance is really when... like if you're getting into fitness and you think, oh, well, I'll just go to the gym and I'll start doing my thing and I'll experiment on my own body and that's how I'm going to learn. Well, that's going to take you a long time. It's going to take a lot of analysis. You're going to have to do some studies. You're going to have to actually track your stuff out extremely well. And the reality is that this thing is very, very well known. Really, the strength and conditioning, I was watching this thing on nutrition the other day, and they were talking about really at the end of it all, basically what they came down to was that we don't really know much about nutrition at this point. And we really don't. We have some decent data, but we really don't. We don't understand what's going on. Like they took all the fat out of the scenario and then we dumped a bunch of sugar and salt back in and everybody got diabetes, right? Well, now everybody's got diabetes. Everybody's well overweight. Everybody's eating about, on average, I think it's like the average American eats about 500 calories more than they need to every day. Nutrition wise, we do not know much about that. However, strength and conditioning, we know so much about strength and conditioning. We know a ton about strength and conditioning. We know more about strength and conditioning than we know about anything else in the health department. We know how you get strong. We know. We are very, very well, I shouldn't say no, but we have very, very good data on that. We are very new to the nutrition game. We are I would say we know quite a bit about strength. We know a little bit about recovery. We know way less about nutrition, and we hardly know anything about mindset on a grand scheme, on what's acceptable, like what's actually in the science texts. Mindset, there's so many different avenues. There's not really a good framework. Strength conditioning, very, very good frameworks out there if you're willing to study them. But you don't have to study them because we've already done that. But the self-sufficient ignorance says, I can do it alone. Now, the problem with that is if you never have a mentor along the way, is that you end up having to go through all of the problems. One of the guys that we were listening to the other day, he was talking about a different subject, but he goes, though, you can always tell the pioneers because they're laying face down in the dirt with a bunch of arrows in their back. And I was like, damn, man. But it's real. Like if you're the pioneer, you had to go through all the bad stuff. If you learn from somebody else, you can learn from their errors and you can capitalize on all of their successes. You don't want to do this alone. Being self-sufficient is a great thing, but you don't have to do it all alone. You can do it with other people. And the question that I always pose to myself, because I tend to get wrapped up in this self-sufficient ignorance, like, oh, I can do it. I can do it myself. I can figure this out on my own. That's really silly. That's so dumb. And the question I ask myself on a regular basis is, even if you could, why would you want to? Even if you could do it all alone, why would you want to? That's the full, even if you could do it all alone, why would you want to? Because Adam tends to consider himself an island. Adam doesn't need no girl. Adam doesn't need no friends. Adam doesn't need nothing. I'm this island. Like, that's silly. I want friends. I want relationships. I want people in my life that I care about. I want to help people, like customers. I don't want to be an island. Back when I was first starting in business, that's how Grit Gym worked. Is like I thought, there's nobody else that can give a better service than me, so I'm never going to hire anybody. What ended up happening? I ended up waking up at 4 a.m., being to work by 5, working until about 11 a.m., going home. I'd get just a really quick, short little nap. I'd eat something. I'd start working on all the businessy stuff. None of that ever got done. I'd be back at the gym by somewhere between 1 and 3, and then I'd work until 9:30 at night. Then I'd come home and I would crash, and then on Saturday, I would work from about 6:30 a.m. to about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I would come home and I'd try to stay awake to keep my sleep schedule light, but I'd end up falling asleep at about 5 to 7 o'clock, and I would sleep until 11 o'clock the next day. I'd sleep for like 16 hours straight. It was crazy. I was trying to be an island. I was trying to do it all myself. Everything went crashing down all around me. It was awful. The girl that I was dating at the time, she was basically gone. All of my friends were non-existent because I was never around. I couldn't do it. My family didn't see me for what felt like years. They were like, what is going on? I was basically just living like a zombie. It was terrible. You don't have to do this. This is that self-sufficient ignorance, thinking that you can do it all alone. And the pros are that you get to rely on yourself. The pros are that that it's what got you here. To be self-sufficient makes you very strong. However, the con is that you have to go through all these mistakes. You have to accumulate all the scars of all the mistakes. And you might learn some great things, but there's other people that have already made that mistake that you can learn from, that you don't have to sit there and make all these errors and get all these scars. So the question I ask myself on a regular basis is, even if I could do it all on my own, why would I want to? Why would I want to continue to do it all on my own? And I don't. I want to have people at the gym that I can influence, like employees. I want to have people at the gym that I can influence, like customers. I want to help people, and I want to have relationships outside the gym too. And I think that you probably do also. Caitlin Shields. Yep, I'm on that island. Got an intern through, so hopefully. Oh, that's awesome. I think everybody, like, when you first start out, like, the self-sufficient thing has to be a thing. Whether it's business, whether it's fitness, whether it's, I mean, nobody's going to kick you out of bed. You know, even if they did come in and kick you up out of bed, you still have to get up out of bed. You can just sit there and get kicked and kicked and kicked and kicked and lay there. You've got to get, even if your alarm clock goes off, you can sleep right through it. You have to be the one that is actually kicking your butt out of bed and going. I don't know why anybody would want to do it alone, especially when there's experts out there that have already done it, that are willing to help you push forward and do it too. So the self-sufficient ignorance thing, it's being self-sufficient is fantastic, but it's going to get in the way at some point. That's why you read books. That's why you buy video products. That's why you go to conferences. That's why you hire coaches. Rach and I were talking about this the other day. Somebody was on the show, and they asked her when she was somewhere else, like, does Adam really have all these coaches? And I was like, and she was like, yeah, he really does have all these coaches. And what I responded with was, to me, the way that I look at it, and you can look at it however you want, but to me, how I look at it is, if it's important in your life, why would you not get a coach? If it's important in your life, like health, wealth, relationships, time, if those are important, why would you not get help in each one of those things? Why would you not listen to somebody that was like an expert on being more efficient with your time or being more focused? Why would you not have somebody help you with your relationships? Why would you not have somebody help you with your money? Why would you not have somebody help you with your health? Like, those are my four. Those are massive things. Like being a parent. Like, I'm not a parent yet, so maybe that's a bad example. But if you're a parent, why would you not want to be, like, if this is the most important thing in your world, why wouldn't you want to become the most, like, the best parent that you could for that kid? Or if you're in a relationship and your relationship is like the really important thing to you, why would you not want to become the best partner that you possibly could? And if you're going to do that, why go through all the pain and the resentment and all of the shit that happens in a relationship to get to that point? Why wouldn't you go and get a coach, someone that can help you navigate how to get to those higher levels, how to share each other more of the love between each other? You know, in fitness is the same thing. I didn't know a lot about strength conditioning when I first started. I was really, really young. And in 1997, my grandma handed me this book. All of a sudden, it opened up this whole new world. Different exercises, different rep schemes. Before that, it was just like, burn out the muscle. Just burn out the muscle. Do as much as you can. And all of a sudden, it became, I started working, instead of just working hard, I started working smart. And when I started working smart, good things started happening. Well, then I read another book. And then I read another book. And then I read another book. And I think people greatly underestimate how well you have to understand something to truly become an expert. Especially in the world today, where if someone can convince you that they're an expert, somehow they just automatically are. You have to understand things on an extremely deep level. I've talked about this before, but The Tortoise and the Hare is not a story about slow and steady. Slow and steady is not what comes out of that story. The story of The Tortoise and the Hare is about underestimating your opponent. The hare didn't lose because the tortoise was slow and steady. The hare lost because the hare underestimated the tortoise. I'm saying do not be the hare and do not be the tortoise. Okay? You have to you do not want to underestimate the amount of work that needs to be involved, the amount of focus, the amount of energy, the amount of attention that needs to be put into what you're trying to succeed at. Everybody's the hare. Everybody underestimates this thing. Do not be the hare. That is what that story is about. It's about not underestimating. It's about not underestimating yourself. It's about not underestimating the work involved. It's about not underestimating your opponent. We're all the hare. We all tend to do this. Do not do this. Do not be this self-sufficient, ignorant person that thinks that they can just make it on their own, no matter what, doesn't need any help. I know how that ends up. That ends up with a knee, that ends up with a foot, that ends up with a shoulder, that ends up with an elbow. These injuries are things that I'm going to carry with me for the rest of my life. Even though I wasn't being super self-sufficiently ignorant, I wasn't going out and hiring coaches. I wasn't getting on the phone and calling people. The internet wasn't what it was back then, what it is now. But this phone, this stuff makes you outrageously powerful. With your phone, you are more powerful than any king in the history of the world. You can know everything. When people talk about that you're trapped or you can't get out of certain things or it's not their fault that they don't have the knowledge. Like, you have the knowledge at your fingertips. Like, almost all the known information in the universe can be accessed via your phone. So don't tell me that you don't have the ability and you don't have the resources to learn. Aaron says, similar to what you said last week on the show, take care of yourself and look at how much your life improves. Serious. But thank you, Aaron. That's indeed. But yeah, self-sufficient ignorance. I don't understand why. I shouldn't say that. I understand why someone would want to be an island and to try to do it themselves. Makes perfect sense. Makes tons of sense. However, it is not reasonable to try to do so. The whole I can do it alone thing, well, even if you could succeed to your wildest dreams in the way that you want to, fitness, exercise, nutrition, health, mindset, all this stuff, even if you could succeed, why would you want to? Why would you want to get to the end, succeed, and be all alone? It'd be like I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to succeed, and then you look around and you're like, nobody's there to share with you. It's like, this sucks, man. And I know what it's like to be on the other side of that when you have this big thing happen. I remember one time I was waiting on this email, and I think it might have been like to secure the loan. I don't remember what this was for. I just remember the action afterwards. But I think it was when we secured the loan to actually start the gym. To start Grit Gym. And I've been waiting on this email for them to confirm that everything went through in the loan, that everything was going to happen. And I remember being in my kitchen at the time, and the email came through. And if you guys don't know, I'm not a very excitable person. I know that I can kind of get excited and stuff like that, but like, I don't cheer. Like, when things happen that I don't get excited. Like when I win a football game, like any touchdown I ever scored, except for the first one, I went over, I handed the ball to the official, and I went and did my next thing. I'm not a big celebrator, so this was out of character for me. But I remember I got this email, came through, everything was confirmed, and I totally did like a Jean-Claude Van Damme, like, yeah, thing in my kitchen. Oh no. Okay, I'm back. Anyway, I stopped and I was like, well, that was strange. I don't do that very often. And I looked around and nobody was there. It was just me. And I was like, okay, well, that's what celebrating all by yourself is like. You know, it would have been much better if you have a bunch of people working for a common goal, and then when you get that common goal, it's so much more fun. Anyway, self-sufficient ignorance is about doing it alone. And the question that I use to get out of my own head for this is, even if I could do it alone, why would I want to? And it always comes down to me being like, I don't want to. I want to do it with a bunch of other people. And that's coming from fairly introverted person. So anyway, thanks for being here, guys. Really appreciate it. We're gonna hop off the show, but start thinking about, like, I'd encourage, I'm not telling you what to do. I don't like imposing, but I would encourage the attention to becoming conscious of when you are acting in that self-sufficient ignorance type space. So when you're like, oh, I don't need to read that book, or I don't need to hire that mentor, or that's too much money, whatever it is. Like, I've played that game before, and now if an information product comes up, I put the money down because I know that the money is going to make me actually read the thing. And I want the knowledge. I want the wisdom. It's because that self-sufficient ignorance game can come up really easy. But I would encourage anybody, are you doing it in your parenting? Are you doing it in your relationship? Are you doing it with your money? Are you doing it with your time? Are you doing it with your exercise, your mindset, or your nutrition? Mindset's a really easy one to do it with. Like, nah, I already know all that mindset stuff. Oh, I know how to lift. It's really easy to do it with those things. But I don't know why people think that they're just inherently supposed to know how to do these things, but they tend to think so. Last story I'll leave you with. Okay, it's the last University of Iowa football game that I went to. It's probably like maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I went with a guy that I know him fairly well, but he was in town. He doesn't live here, and he's like, hey, you want to go to a game or something? I said, yeah, sure. So we went to a game. We're sitting there, and during the game, this play got called. Something happened. I don't remember what the situation was, but I heard the kid behind me go, the guy behind me, he goes, you never do X, Y, Z in ABC. So in this one situation, you never do this. And then he followed that up with, and I was like, huh, okay, well, that's interesting, because I don't remember what the details were, but I was like, you do that all the time. And then he goes, I'm a junior in high school, and even I know that. Okay, this is a junior in high school that maybe plays football, who knows, that is saying that Kirk Ferentz and all of his staff, so multiple people who have prepared, probably each one of them has probably put 80 hours into that game that previous week, and they have decades, literally decades of experience in the game and study of the game and all this stuff, and they're at this extremely high level. D1 football is a pretty big deal, and he thinks that he knows better and this kid has the gift of hindsight. So hindsight's 20/20, right? So he already saw the outcome of the play. He thinks that he would have known better what to do in that situation. That's self-sufficient ignorance. That is insane. That you know better than those guys that have put in all that time, 80 hours in just that 1 week to prepare for that one game. And you know better what one play should be. And that 20 years of study in this game and all the years that they played before that, and you think that you somehow know better. That's self-sufficient ignorance. It's a dangerous place to be in, because you'll end up never fulfilling the purpose of your life, because you ended up trying to make all the mistakes to learn all the things, and it takes a long, long time to do that when you could have learned from the people who already made the mistakes in the first place and did all the study and did all the work. That's why you get a coach. But anyway, thanks for being here, guys. If you like this episode, please comment down below. I love it when you guys comment, and please comment, or please share right down over here. That helps us out too. But anyway, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow.